you a woman in medicine feeling overwhelmed and disconnected from the personal fulfillment that you desire? You're in the right place. Join Doctors Joanne and Aaron as they rewrite the rules for women in medicine. Let's begin.
It's like, no, we're here together. We make each other better. We share ideas, and it explodes in goodness, right? So we're practicing those things, even though it's sometimes a lot of effort and time. It's so important. We both truly believe in this mission, and how neat to have people like you to come into our space and share the greatness with our audience.
Well, and I just, I feel like I've learned so much from both of you, and particularly like just about again, Erin, I was just saying this to her, those statistics are staggering, right? But here you are bringing the light, bringing the love, helping, supporting, talk about creating a movement. So I'm so happy to be here. Yay.
Yeah. And so and I'm actually, as I'm thinking about footage I want to pull, I want to pull footage from some of the things you said, Sherry, in our last one to promote this. I've only got like 6 days to promote this thing, and it's been so busy, but it was just the beautiful way to share this way of writing cards. So with that, I did start the recording because we always say there's so much at the beginning, and why didn't we record that? So I pushed record.
And we're keeping this because it's the backstage of what we're doing. And as promised for our listeners, we have Sherry back with us, and we want to share her. And I call her the expert of joy and the intention of acts of kindness. And we were talking about the acts of kindness, joy, how to spread it, how to write like insane, all these things. So if you have not listened to our last episode, please do so, because it was full of nuggets and things that we can do right now. But I want to kind of see the other side of the coin. And I'll put on my psychiatry hat for a minute, because obviously talking about mental health awareness and prevention is something that's very important to me and for Erin as well. And that's part of our mission. And I've heard you talk about these topics. And Sherry, I would love for you to share why talking about depression and mental emotional well-being is important to you.
Yes. And thank you. I'm so glad that we're going a little bit deeper into this part of things, because I feel it's really important, because my company is called Simply Celebrate. And a lot of the work I do is around practicing joy, but all of its roots are in my own history of depression and anxiety. And I never want to speak about joy without talking about those roots, because it's so important for people, I think, to understand like this was my path. And I know people have many, many paths for their own mental health. But the way that I saved my life was really through some of these practices. And if I might just tell the quick story about where pinpricks of light came from, because that is and has been my guiding force for decades, which was that for me, the depression and the anxiety were really coming from what felt like this constant barrage in my head of how I wasn't living up to who I should be, and I wasn't the right person, and I wasn't good enough, and I wasn't enough, and I wasn't, fill in the blank enough. And it became so horrendous that I just wanted out. And I was always just imagining ways to get off this planet. And I was led to a meditation class. And walking in, it felt literally like an iron wall just closing in on me. People who have that kind of, depression might understand that feeling. And there was a moment when I was in this meditation class that, how they have you focus on your in-breath and your out-breath. And on one of the in-breaths, I heard, I don't want to kill myself. And it was phenomenal to me. It was a moment, and I instantly had that image of a pinprick of light in that iron wall. And one tiny bit of light changes everything. We all know that, right? When you're in complete darkness, like for me, that one pinprick, suddenly I realized like, if it's possible to have a moment of relief like that, maybe I can have another one, right? And that's how I started looking around for those moments of well-being, those moments when I was like not in such complete suffering. And, I'd be holding my cat and feel that, or hearing my mom's voice on the phone. And then I started realizing after much practice that I could actually create those moments for myself, right? So I started thinking about how could I create a moment of a pinprick of light. I could call a friend when I was really sad, or I could go to the beach. And then after years of practicing, was really the true medicine for me was when I could get out of my own head and see a lot of people are in the dark. There's a lot of depression out there. There's a lot of anxiety. There are a lot of people who are in pain. And I realized that when I gave a pinprick of light to someone, I was always the first recipient. So it was this beautiful way of being in the world that was easy, because a pinprick of light can be so simple. And I needed that, and still do to this day often. And so it's kind of a little bit of a long story, but I feel like it's important to say because that is why I use that expression a lot.
And you talk about, I've heard you use that term, two sides of the coin. Can you expand a little bit on that, Sherry, for our listener? Because we've had many conversations, and this may be their first time meeting you, and you've got so much wisdom to share when we're talking about topics that are serious like mental health.
Yeah. And I want to preface this by saying I'm not a mental health expert, right? I just have my own experience. But my own experience is that depression and celebration are two sides of the coin for me. That to this day, after many years, joy is my practice, as we said. I was talking about this in the last episode. And a lot of the reason is because it starts with my own sense of despair or discouragement, or, just feeling like I can't go on. I just think I'm wired that way. But I know that on the other side of that coin, when I use the word celebration because I feel like it's important to feel that burst of like, it's possible. Joanne talked about in the last episode, sending out notes to people, right? So when I'm feeling that despair, that depression, the celebration part is a pinprick of light for someone. And that can flip the coin for me. And it does flip the coin for me. That's one of the things I think over years of practice, it's a pretty fast flip now. Used to take a lot longer. But it's that flip of like, oh yeah, someone else might be feeling despair or discouragement or depression, or they're exhausted, or they can't get through this day. And I could be the one to maybe offer a little bit of a shift, a boost of love. So that's why I say, and I like the visual of being able to flip the coin. It gives me a little bit, or actually a lot of agency.
Well, and I have a visual where I can see each side, right? And then, it also gives you that sense, that foundation. I might be in this moment of despair right now. It's not going to last forever. It's a season. And then the coin will flip and I will get to experience that other side. And each one helps us appreciate the other side even more. Sometimes the deeper our despair, the more we appreciate the celebration side.
That is so beautiful, Erin, and so true, right? And also when we remember it for ourselves, I think it gives us that empathy and that compassion. I mean, I don't have any, regrets over the fact that I've went through that very, very deep depression in my life, because it's what enables me to love so deeply, just like you said, so beautifully,
And you talk about different ways to love. If you haven't listened to the last episode, part 1 of our interview with Sherry Richert Belul, please go back and listen to that, because it really talks about the lightness aspects and the joy that she spreads in the world. And what I would like to hear from you, Sherry, is you send out anonymous cards. You do the Secrets of Agents of Change, where you go out and do positive things for people. You also share something about why it can be very important to be specific when you're showing appreciation for others. Can you help us better understand that?
Yes, it's one of my favorite things to talk about because it's a little bit subtle, but Erin, I'm going to use you for an example, if that's okay. So I'm looking at you right now and I feel like Oh, I love you, Erin. I love you. And I'm guessing that's nice to hear.
Yeah.
However, what happens when I say to you, Erin, I have so much respect and admiration for the way that you have changed your whole life in order to be a kind of person who could spend more time with your children, who could do the work you're doing with Joanne to help other physicians, other women physicians, the way that you've dedicated so much of your time and energy to being this force in the world of good and change. I love that about you. Is is that different?
A little, yeah, it makes me a little speechless. Yeah.
Because what it does when we're specific is, first of all, it's that I'm seeing you, right? Like I'm seeing you specifically, but it's also about the relationship between us. I can say I love you, and I do say I love you to many people in my life. But when I'm specific with you, it's a moment between us that we're recognizing together. Like your impact on me, it's like a little circle of love that is only between us. And I really feel like there's something that is life-changing in that. I feel like that's what people really want. Like we want to be seen in that way.
I'm going to practice. Sherry, I love you. And I love how you remind us that even in a dark time when it feels like we don't have options, we do. Sometimes we have to hold that coin looking at it from the dark side, but then we can make the decision of, even if it's like a little peek, even if we're not ready to completely flip it, to peek at it before we flip it and then say, how can I find that the pinprick of light and feel a little bit better, even when we're still holding our other emotions. So I thank you for all of that. And with that, if we can get even more specific about being specific about, because we're focusing on kind of the mental and emotional health. One, besides us feeling like it feels good in our heart, what are the mental health benefits when we are specific and we tie it into your card making as well, and the gifts of and the acts of kindness?
Yeah, I love that, Joanne. And Erin mentioned in our last episode something called the love list. And this was actually, I think, the practice that saved me the most. And the reason is the love list is the specific reasons we love someone. So it's great for me to think, I love Joanne and Erin. But it's also kind of a fleeting moment, and it's not really quite getting in there. But if I'm specifically focusing, and this is what I did for a long time, I'm thinking about Joanne, and whenever I see you at an event, you almost like squeal and you always run up to me and you give me a big hug and you get that smile. And I know a lot of times you may not be feeling that in the moment, but you bring it anyway. And, oh, Erin, and it's the way that you and Mike are together when I see you. And you can see already, like, those were just a couple of things. And I would go on if I were doing a love list. And what it's doing is it's rewiring in that moment. I mean, really, and I know this for a fact that that's what I was doing for myself all those years by focusing on love. In those moments, I really don't think that love and depression can exist at the same time in that way. When you're focusing on love, it's just sort of like this constant, like an IV, right? And so the specificity, we're actually, I think, feeling it even before it impacts you two, it's changing me. It's changing me because I think part of it is we're reliving, right? And you guys could probably speak more to this than I can, but don't they say like all the same chemicals go through your body? So if I'm reliving very specific moments with people I love, or very specific their laughter, or things about them, I'm sending all those chemicals through my body. Is that true?
Yeah, and it makes me think of two things. One, like I say, I can, because we coach physicians, then we sometimes some of them need empirical data and like facts. And I said, I can tell you what's going on in your brain. And I love that you touch on the rewiring, and I can get very woo-woo as well, or somewhere in the middle. But there's, there is science behind what we know, that our brain will automatically grab the negative as a survival mechanism. We understand that. And that we have to be more intentional to wire the positive. And it takes 10 to 15 seconds. And I usually say that in as you know, for journaling, because I love to journal. But what you just said was the fact that even without journaling, just the fact that you so intentionally, like I could see your eyes almost transporting to that moment when you're seeing me or you're seeing Erin. I'm like, and it will take about 10 to 15 seconds for you to create that vision in your brain. And that's the rewiring in your brain. And then the woo woo part is that if you feel it, which is not woo woo, we know this, but I like to call it woo woo. If you feel it, you'll project it out. That's the energy that you carry through, and the people around you will feel it. So that's how we contribute to the kind of the greater good as well. So lovely.
I love that. And there's a third piece, I think, which is that the more we practice this, and I've happened to dedicate my life to it because I need to, and I love it, but it's the more we practice it, the more I know that I'm going to want to express to someone specific reasons I love them. So I am also on the lookout all the time, right? That's the true rewiring. Like, as you said, right? Our brains want to find what's wrong, but I'm like, oh my gosh, what's good? What's loving? What's great about this? And so it's that training too.
You have rewired your reticular activating system. And our listener, the female doctor, knows what that is. And you're right. The more you practice it, the more you look for it. It's like when you buy a Ford car, right? Whatever, Ford Taurus, I don't know, whatever the car is, you're going to see them everywhere because your brain said, oh, that's important to me. So you have trained your brain, the good stuff is important. So I must be on the lookout. Your brain knows that it's important. And then think about how much easier it gets, and easier because you've had years and years of practice. And not only that, Sherry, you are also role modeling that for others. And what I love about your story is that you went from a very dark place. You talk about, what is it? This iron, what is your description? Iron wall around you. And I've had this visual, and then these tiny pinpricks of light. And yet when the people I know you who haven't heard that part of your story, they know you as the fun, joyful woman, full of smiles and hugs, always a fun hat and fun little gloves on and amazing style. You stand out as the joy bringer. And what they don't understand is that you have chosen, and all three of us are coaches, and we know that we always have a choice. And you have chosen with intention, and you have role modeled. And if you can do it, others can do it. And it doesn't mean it's easy, but we always have the choice. And when you make those little choices every day, you first experienced a pinprick of life that came in with a breath of meditation. Then you learn to look for them. And now you spread them to everyone in your community. And I just think, what a beautiful role model and example for those of us who get the pleasure and blessing of having you in our lives. And I just think how many hundreds or thousands of lives that you've changed because you made that one choice to focus on that one pinprick of light that then made an entire shift. So small, and yet like the butterfly effect, right? That the flap of a butterfly's wings in South America can create a tsunami across the world. Truly, that it gives me chills. That is an example of what that one focus in your life happened years ago and the outcome.
Erin, thank you. Oh my gosh. And talking to you too, this is why it's so important to me, and I'm so grateful, right? Because I don't ever want to be the person that people see and they're just like, oh, it must be nice to be that joyful, right? I never want to be that. I want to be the person that role models in this one moment. What is one tiny thing? What is one, because it's like, I often visualize it even that it's like, it's literally turning, right? It's a literal turning to the light, but that puts us on a different path. And it's so small. And I just know in my own life that it has to be that simple. Because, and you, I think Joanne said this in the last episode, and I'm a huge proponent for this. Happiness is fleeting. Happiness is great. Like, I love when I'm happy. I love when it sort of comes or I create it somehow or whatever. But But joy is what we're talking about. Joy is knowing that no matter what, we're going to be okay, and that we're going to support each other, and we're going to hold hands through this. Joy is knowing that we're going to get through grief and hardship, and that we will find the light no matter what. To me, that's the difference.
And because I know this about you, Sherry, because we've shared many moments together, I have shared with my coaching clients, and I think with our listeners as well. Sometimes I have a tactile reminder. I know I bought a bracelet at one of Brendan's events, and it said something like, maybe you remember, it's you are strong and the future hold good things for you. I don't remember the exact words. I'm messing it up. And it was on a leather bracelet. And when I was struggling, I would wear it. And you've shared the story about what happens when you put on your hat each day. And again, it can be so simple. Would you mind sharing that with our listeners so they have the benefit of what you've learned, and maybe they can bring that into their life if they're struggling?
And I love that. I love that you talked about that, like having a tangible, right? It can be a piece of jewelry. For me, you're right. Like, so people are always like, why do you wear hats all the time? What's up with that? And it's like, for me, I made a definite choice to be here. Like when I came to the like, okay, I'm going to stay on this planet. I'm not going to entertain these ideas anymore of how to get off. I wanted to remind myself that every day truly is a gift. I mean, it's cliche, but it's true. We don't know how much time we have. And hats to me are kind of like a little like, ta-da, they're like, the icing on the cake. It's a way of just sort of, it's also a celebratory thing to put on a hat for me. And it reminds me, no matter what, be here, be here and find, even if it's one tiny moment of celebration in a day, that's enough, right? Because when you string them together, that adds up.
And I have a picture with Sherry at one of the conferences several years ago, her in her fabulous hat. And I had a Minnie Mouse hat. It wasn't like the ear ones. It was like a little fashion thing, but it was like, in the picture, it's hilarious because we're both like gigantic mouth open smile. It was like pure joy talking about it. Of course, no one knows that Sherry was tickling me in the background to get that big smile, right? And we were just posing, and she's like, no, we're getting big smiles. And that was the picture.
For those of you on YouTube, maybe we can get the photo to our producers and they can insert, because I have that photo of us at the conference, and yeah, you two with your beautiful hats on.
I wanted to ask, so in our last episode, we talked about create meaning in medicine. Of course, that's the title of our podcast. And you shared how you create meaning, and it's so many valuable notes there. But now I want to ask about the other part of our title, the rewriting the rules. And of course, we talk about our women physician, but how have you rewritten the rules in your life?
I love that question. I love that you guys ask people that. The first thing that comes to my mind is that it's really important to me that we rewrite the way that we see what a gift is. This is hugely important to me. And it's the one thing I think that if I could die knowing that I got this across, I'd be so happy, which is that gift is not something, it doesn't have to be tangible. It doesn't have to be something you buy, that you wrap up, that you give on a, special occasion. I want people really to understand, and I really would love to rewrite the idea of gift in that, like, this is a gift. Being with people who are listening, present, I can tell you guys aren't distracted. You're right here with me. You really care. That is probably the biggest gift we can give, right? And I really think it's important that things like a card in the mail, that is a huge gift. That is not a small thing to get a card, put a stamp on it, handwrite something, and send it to someone. That is a big gift. Way bigger, I think, than going to the mall and buying someone a pair of shoes or whatever you're going to buy them. And that's the thing I think to rewrite or to change the rules is helping people understand that. Pausing on the street to talk to your neighbor, that's a gift. Your energy. I know you two do this. You intentionally bring really good energy wherever you go. Huge gift. And so really for people, I think if people could wake up each day and understand I'm giving gifts all day long or not, how am I holding back or how am I giving? And to think of gifts in those ways, that really gets me excited.
And I find with many of the women that we interact with, women physicians, women in medicine, are so busy serving others that they are never present in the moment. For my own life, for the first, 2+ decades in medicine, I was constantly doing things for others. And it wasn't until I hired my first coach that I learned that when I was at work and I was worried about what was going on with my kids and feeling guilty that I wasn't with them, and when I was at home with my kids and I was worried about the charts I needed to do and my leadership responsibilities at work, I was never fully present with anyone, my patients, my family, my team that I supervised. And that in itself was a gift for me to learn from my coach about how to set better boundaries and how to drop in and be more fully present in the moment, even when you are a super busy physician with so many heavy loads that you're carrying. And yet, our lives are the little moments all along the way. A hug from your teenager, looking your spouse in the eyes and telling them how much you appreciate that they made you your favorite latte that morning. And as we talk about the seriousness of the mental health issues, and you shared your own story, Sherry, we know in medicine that actually choosing to go in medicine may shorten our lives. We have higher suicide rates in men and much higher suicide rates in women physicians than in women in other professions. And it just makes me wonder what might happen if we gave ourselves permission to be fully present and fully enjoy all those tiny little moments in our day and be fully present with our patients, that we might then feel the impact we're making instead of so focused on what's the next duty I need to do? What do I need to do for that person? Meanwhile, ignoring yourself and never being fully present for anyone, and the beauty that happens just from that simple gift of being present.
Wow, that was so powerful, what you just said, right? Because I think I have no idea what it's like to be a woman physician. I can only imagine. But I know what it's like to not be able to be present because there's so much of a barrage in my head. And that, who wants to be alive if you're not really alive? I think that's what you're pointing to, right? It's that. And I love that you said that gift to yourself. You guys heard my story. It took me a long time of focusing on my own self and bringing myself back to life before I could, give in a different way. And I think, Erin, this is so important what you're saying, and you too are just doing such beautiful work, right? In helping in this way.
Well, and hopefully highlighting some of those topics that aren't always shared. And Joanne and I both know from our work with other women in medicine and group coaching and our retreats and things that we don't always feel safe sharing what's troubling us. Joanne, did you have?
I was just going to bring it back to some of the things that we're talking on the last episode of the importance to say it now, because we don't know. We don't know what's going to happen. And if we feel it, it doesn't need to be necessarily like something horrible happens, but like you were saying in the last episode, Sherry, we might miss the moment for ourselves and for others. And this is, I think, that the intention, the presence, the awareness, the clarity, the energy, all those things that we talk about in that phrase of say it now. It's so powerful. I'm going to take it with me.
But I just want to underscore what you're both saying, which is that, we all walk around thinking that we're going to be here tomorrow and that the people we love are going to be here tomorrow, or that doctor who helped us, that we're going to be able to thank them next week or the week after. And I think what you two are both saying is so essential. We have to be able to get present enough to realize that's an illusion and we don't know. And the say it now piece could be the very thing that helps someone in the moment that they may not be knowing if they want to stay here or not. So I just think it's so big what you two are saying.
And it doesn't need to be complicated. For those on YouTube, I'm going to show Sherry's book, Say It Now. It's available in many different places. Sherry, tell our listener where they can find you so that they can follow up on some of the ideas that you've hopefully planted with them.
I love that. So my company is called Simply Celebrate, and it's simplycelebrate.net. And on all the different social media, I can be found at Simply Celebrate.
And if you're looking for some inspiration, go head on over to Simply Celebrate and find some areas where you can boost your joy. And if you haven't yet listened to the prior episode where we interviewed Sherry, please go back and take a listen and you'll get lots more ideas. And stay tuned because our next episode is coming right up.
Do you want exclusive resources and the opportunity to connect with us? Then visit createmeaninginmedicine.com now, where you'll dive deeper into how you can create meaning in medicine. And if you're serious about optimizing your results, take 2 quick steps now. Connect with us on the website and tune in to the next episode.